I've got a question for you. In fact, over the years, I think I have asked this question 200 times. Here goes. How many exoplanets are there? You know, planets outside of our solar system. Take a guess. Unless you're into astrology, chances are you have no idea, but you probably came up with a guess. And would it surprise you to know that I almost certainly influenced your answer? Anchoring is a cognitive bias. And it occurs when people are exposed to a number or an idea before being asked to make a decision. This causes them to rely heavily on this information when considering the question at hand, even if that information was totally irrelevant. When I asked you for the number of discovered exoplanets, your mind was already anchored to the number 200 and your guess went up or down from that number. But here's the kicker. When I asked that question, I was just throwing a random number at you. 200 is not accurate at all. It's way off. There are well over 4,000 exoplanets that have been discovered and more being discovered all the time. The important thing about this cognitive bias is that it doesn't just happen in situations like the one I've outlined before here. It happens every day, all the time. If you're not careful, it can even affect your business decisions. In one experiment, people were asked to write down the last 2 digits from their social security number and then report how much they would be willing to pay for a bottle of wine. People with a higher 2-digit social security number said that they were willing to pay more for the wine than people with a lower social security number. What that tells us is that the amount of money we're willing to pay for a product can be directly influenced by arbitrary numbers, even seemingly random 2-digit numbers. Anchoring and priming happen all the time in retail and can result in altering your perceived value. Let's take a look at how it works. One of the most common kinds of anchoring and priming is using a high price as an anchor for cheaper prices. When you see expensive stuff first, then cheaper stuff will seem like a better deal. For example, if you walk into a store selling shoes and the first thing you see is a pair of shoes for $400, then when you look at a pair of shoes that are $50, they'll seem like quite the bargain. When you walk into a grocery store, the first thing you see are the produce, the dairy and the meat sections, things that cost quite a bit of money. Then you go down to the cereal, chips and chocolate bars, which are all cheaper. They anchor the prices of everything else in the store by making the expensive things seem cheaper and the cheap things seem more expensive. How to avoid anchoring bias. And knowing that anchoring and priming is happening all around you and it's heavily influencing your decisions about spending money is really the first step. It may be intentional, or like that example with the exoplanets, it could also be just completely random numbers that are influencing you. If you learn to recognize when this bias is affecting your decisions, it will make it much easier for you to avoid being manipulated by high value things like $400 shoes. Other videos in this series of cognitive bias include loss aversion versus risk aversion and availability bias versus confirmation bias. You can check them out here.